On the eve of humanity's most significant space mission, Commander Sarah Dawson stood on the observation deck of the flagship Vanguard. The galaxies stretched out before her, a canvas of stars that seemed to pulse with unseen energy. The crew was ready for the journey of a lifetime, the exploration of the farthest reaches of space, a mission that would solidify humanity's place among the stars. But something was wrong. As the Vanguard made its final preparations to launch from Earth's orbit, a strange anomaly appeared on the ship's radar. Something that shouldn't have been there. A small, blinking light. Not far from the ship, just beyond the moon. "Track that signal," Sarah ordered, her voice calm, yet sharp. Her crew quickly responded, but the radar blip didn't match any known objects in the system. No asteroid, no satellite, just a signal. "It's not from Earth," Lieutenant James, the communications officer, confirmed, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I've never seen anything like this." "Can you decipher it?" Sarah asked, stepping closer to the console. The voice that responded was not human. "Are you ready to follow the stars, Commander?" A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The voice was calm, almost too calm. It wasn't a distress signal. It wasn't a warning. It was a question. And something about it made her feel as though she wasn't alone anymore. Sarah looked out at the endless stretch of stars. There was something out there, something calling to them, to her. "We're not going anywhere until we figure out what this is," Sarah declared. But as she spoke, the light on the radar flickered and disappeared. The Vanguard launched as scheduled, but now Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that this mission wasn't just about exploration. It was about finding something or someone that had been waiting for humanity to arrive. As the ship hurtled through the void, Sarah felt the weight of the unknown pressing in on her. Whatever that signal had been, it was just the beginning. Days passed since the strange signal, but Commander Sarah Dawson couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Vanguard glided to the cold expanse of space, leaving Earth far behind. Despite the beautiful view of distant stars and galaxies, a constant unease lingered among the crew. Sarah stood in the observation room, staring out at the vast nothingness. The ship's hum was the only sound, yet in her mind, she kept hearing that voice. "Are you ready to follow the stars?" It had been almost a week since the signal, and no one had been able to track its source. The radar had gone silent, yet in the back of her mind, Sarah couldn't let go of the nagging suspicion that the answer lay somewhere just beyond their reach. "Commander!" A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Lieutenant James, his face serious as he entered the room. "We've got something. It's faint, but it's a signal. Same frequency as the one we intercepted." Sarah turned quickly, her pulse quickening. "Can you pinpoint it?" He nodded. "It's coming from a sector near the edge of the Oort cloud. We're close. But this time, it's not fading away." The Vanguard was already en route, but they would need to change course. Sarah knew that something waited for them there. But what? The crew wasn't prepared for what they would find. As they approached the coordinates, a strange sensation washed over Sarah. It wasn't fear, at least not exactly. It was more like familiarity, as though she had been here before. The stars around them began to shift in odd ways, swirling like a vortex, bending in on themselves. "What's happening?" James asked, eyes wide with confusion. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, the ship's systems began to malfunction. The lights flickered and alarms blared. The autopilot disengaged, and the Vanguard began to veer off course. "Shut down the systems," Sarah shouted. "Lock everything down." The crew scrambled to regain control, but before they could, a flash of light enveloped the entire ship. It wasn't the usual flare from a nearby star. This light had substance, an almost tactile quality. It felt like it was pulling at the very fabric of the ship itself, bending reality. And then everything went black. When Sarah regained consciousness, she found herself in a different place. The Vanguard was still intact, but they were no longer in deep space. The stars outside the ship's windows were unfamiliar, twisted, and alien. "Report." Sarah snapped as she struggled to sit up. "It's a different sector," Lieutenant James stammered, checking his console. We We've traveled somewhere not of our own doing. The stars, they're wrong. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just an accident. Whatever had happened, whatever had pulled them off course, it had done so with intention. "Commander, there's a ship nearby," James added, voice shaking. "It's like nothing we've ever seen. It's huge, almost organic looking." Sarah moved quickly to the viewport. There, just beyond the reach of the Vanguard, was the ship. Its surface was shifting, alive in a way that made her skin crawl. It was as though the ship itself was breathing. And then, before she could react, the same voice from the signal spoke again. This time, not through the ship's speakers, but directly in her mind. "You have followed the path of the stars, Commander. Now, you must face the truth of your heritage." Her breath caught in her throat as the voice continued. "You are not just human. You are the key to a destiny far greater than you can understand. And those who came before you have been waiting." The voice in Sarah's mind echoed louder now, its words reverberating through her thoughts. She couldn't escape it, no matter how hard she tried. "You are the key to a destiny far greater than you can understand." But what did it mean? What kind of destiny was she supposed to fulfill? The crew was still reeling from the sudden shift in reality. The stars outside the Vanguard were warped, alien, unlike anything they had ever seen. The ship that hovered nearby, alive, pulsating, remained motionless, as though watching them, waiting. Sarah's head was spinning. The voice had called her the key, but key to what? And why was she hearing this? She was just a human, an Earth-born commander. There had to be an explanation. "Commander!" Lieutenant James's voice cut through her thoughts. "There's something strange happening in the lower decks. Crew members are reporting hallucinations. They're hearing voices, seeing things." "Not again," Sarah muttered. It was as if whatever had touched them was slowly leaking through the walls, into their minds, and taking control. "Keep the crew contained. No one leaves their stations until we get answers." She turned back to the viewport, eyes narrowing as she studied the alien ship. It had no visible propulsion systems, yet it drifted effortlessly in the strange, warped space around them. The surface shimmered with dark, iridescent lights, as though the ship itself was a living organism, its heartbeat resonating with a low, vibrating hum that Sarah could feel in her bones. Then a movement. A figure appeared at the edge of the viewport, standing just outside the ship, silhouetted against the glow of the alien vessel. A tall figure, humanoid in shape, but impossibly elongated. Its features were vague, its face obscured by shadows, but its presence was undeniable. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She knew that figure, not consciously, but it was as if her mind recognized it. A being from her past, or something more. "Who are you?" she whispered, even though she knew no one could hear her over the loud hum in her head. Before she could blink, the figure was gone. In its place, a flood of images rushed through her mind. Stars, planets, a flash of light, a woman, someone who looked like Sarah, standing at the edge of a burning city. The woman's eyes glowed with otherworldly power, and as she spoke, the words echoed in Sarah's head. "The path is chosen. The time has come. You must accept your fate, for the stars are waiting." Sarah stumbled back from the viewport, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't breathe. The images, the voice, they were too much. What was happening to her? "Commander!" Lieutenant James called again, his voice full of alarm. "The alien ship is transmitting something. It's targeting us. The signal, it's—" But before he could finish, a sudden, blinding flash of light filled the cockpit. The Vanguard shook violently as if it had been struck by something invisible. The crew scrambled, but the ship was in free fall. The stars outside spun out of control, the ship careening through an unknown dimension. It was like nothing Sarah had ever experienced. Time felt warped, and reality seemed to stretch and twist around them. Then, as quickly as it started, everything stopped. The ship was still. The stars outside were normal again. The Vanguard was intact, but they were no longer in the same place. Sarah staggered to her feet, eyes wide as she stared at the unfamiliar sky. There were no planets in sight, no familiar constellations. They were in the middle of nowhere. "This isn't where we were," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Where are we?" Before anyone could answer, a new voice cut through the air. It was deep, powerful, and unmistakably alien. "You are here at the edge of the path. Now, you must face the truth of your bloodline. You cannot run anymore, Commander. You belong to the stars." The vanguard drifted silently, suspended in a starless void. Sarah stood before the viewport, her hands pressed against the cool glass, staring out at the nothingness. The ship's sensors were still malfunctioning, unable to lock onto any familiar stellar coordinates. They had left everything behind. Earth, the stars they knew, all gone. What had happened? The alien voice still echoed in her mind. "You belong to the stars." It had felt like a command, like a prophecy. But Sarah couldn't let it consume her. She needed to think clearly, to stay grounded. She turned toward her crew, who were scattered across the bridge, each of them silently processing the chaos that had unfolded in the past few hours. "We have to regain control of the ship," she said, her voice firm despite the unease bubbling beneath the surface. "Check every system, every backup. We can't stay here, adrift. We need answers." Just as she spoke, the ship lurched again, but this time, it wasn't the ship that shook. The entire vanguard seemed to pulse, as though it was reacting to something outside. The walls hummed with an unfamiliar energy, vibrating beneath her feet. "What the hell is that?" Lieutenant James gasped, his eyes wide as the consoles flickered. A loud, grinding noise echoed through the ship, and the lights dimmed, casting the crew in shadow. Then the unthinkable happened. A shape, massive like a shadow of the ship itself, began to form at the far end of the bridge, coalescing out of the air itself. Sarah's breath hitched. The figure, humanoid yet impossibly large, stepped forward, and the air seemed to distort around it. The being's skin was dark, almost obsidian, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, fixed directly on Sarah. "You've been chosen." The being's voice was deep, reverberating in the very core of her being. "Your bloodline is the key to the star's rebirth." The figure's presence felt immense, like it existed in a space beyond reality itself. Sarah could barely comprehend the weight of its words. Who are you?" she forced out, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay composed. "I am an envoy of the Ancient Ones," the figure replied. "And you, Sarah Dawson, are the heir to an ancient power, one that will shape the fate of all worlds." A surge of panic rose within her. "No, I'm just a commander. I'm human, earthborn." The being tilted its head, its glowing eyes narrowing. "Human, yes, but not just human. You were born of the stars. Sarah, you are starborn." Sarah staggered back as the word hit her like a physical blow. Starborn. She had heard the term whispered in old legends, ancient myths of an elite group who had the power to bridge the gap between worlds. Humans with celestial blood, who were meant to lead the universe into a new age. "But that's impossible," she breathed. "I'm just a captain, a soldier. I don't know anything about this." The being's voice softened, as if understanding her confusion. "The truth has been hidden from you, Commander. The lineage of the Starborn was erased from your people's history, but the time has come for you to reclaim your heritage." Before she could respond, the ship trembled again. A loud, metallic screech echoed through the hull, and the ship's emergency lights flickered. The energy from the alien vessel outside the vanguard intensified. The glowing being stepped aside, revealing a map of stars projected in the air in front of Sarah. The stars began to move, shifting in patterns she couldn't decipher. "Is this what you were meant for?" the figure asked, its voice dark and foreboding. "This map will lead you to the heart of the universe, where you will be tested. Only then will you understand your true power." The energy grew unbearable, a force that gripped her chest as if the stars themselves were calling to her. She felt something stir inside of her, a power she didn't know existed, something ancient awakening. The map before her flickered again. This time, one star stood out, glowing brighter than the rest. It pulsed, as if it were alive. "Follow the path of the Nova Star," the being intoned. "It is where your journey begins, and it will end where the stars have been waiting." Before Sarah could respond, The figure faded, dissolving into the fabric of space itself. The Vanguard shuddered once more, and the stars outside the viewport snapped back into focus. "Set course for the Nova Star," Sarah ordered, her voice steady, though inside she was trembling. "We're going there. We have no choice." As the crew scrambled to comply, Sarah took one last look at the empty space where the figure had stood. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but there was one thing she knew for certain. The path ahead would lead her to answers, and the answers could change everything. The Vanguard raced through the darkness of space, following the coordinates given to them by the ancient being. Every crew member worked in silence, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of their consoles. The path ahead felt like a void, but it was the only path Sarah could take. The Nova Star, the key to unlocking her true power, lay ahead. Sarah stood at the helm, her hands gripping the controls, her mind still processing the truth she had been given. Starborn. She had never believed in myths, yet here she was, destined for something beyond the human experience. She could feel the weight of the ancient power growing inside her, but it terrified her. What did it mean to be a Starborn? And what would happen when they reached the Nova Star? "Commander!" Lieutenant James's voice broke through her thoughts. "We're approaching the coordinates. But there's something strange. The star's not where it's supposed to be." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What's wrong?" James pointed at the screen, and Sarah's gaze snapped to the display. The Nova Star was supposed to be a beacon in the dark, a pulsating light that guided travelers to the heart of the universe. But instead, it was a black hole, an empty, swirling void that seemed to devour the light around it. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered, staring at the monitor in disbelief. The Nova Star was a symbol of hope, a place of rebirth. How could it be a black hole? And why was it pulling them in? "We're being drawn toward it," James said, his voice laced with fear. "The ship's systems are struggling to maintain course. We need to adjust or we'll be caught in its gravity." But it was already too late. The pull of the black hole intensified, and Sarah felt the Vanguard shudder under the strain. The crew scrambled to regain control, but the gravitational force was overwhelming. As the ship lurched forward, Sarah could feel the stars themselves warping, bending in ways that defied all logic. Time itself seemed to stretch and contract, as if they were no longer in the same dimension. The voice, the ancient being's voice, echoed again in Sarah's mind, but this time it wasn't comforting. It was a warning. "You are nearing the edge, Commander. The Nova Star is a place of both creation and destruction. It is where you will face the final test. Only by understanding your true power can you survive what lies ahead." The walls of the Vanguard trembled, and a deep hum filled the air, resonating with the very core of Sarah's being. It was as if the ship and everything around them was alive, connected to some greater force. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to center herself. The power within her was growing, but it was uncontrollable, chaotic. She felt it surging through her, a torrent of energy that threatened to break her mind. This is what it means to be Starborn, she realized. The power was not just a gift. It was a force that could either heal or destroy. "Commander!" James called again, his voice shaking. "We're not going to make it. The ship's systems are failing. We're too close." But Sarah didn't answer. She wasn't sure if she had the strength to stop what was happening. The Vanguard was hurtling toward the black hole, and her crew was depending on her to save them. But how? She barely understood the power that was awakening inside her. "Embrace it, Sarah," the voice urged once more, its tone not as gentle as before. "You must embrace your destiny. The star's darkness is the only way to reveal the truth." And then the unimaginable happened. The Vanguard seemed to be torn apart by a massive wave of energy. The walls cracked, and a blinding light filled the cabin. Sarah could hear the cries of her crew as they were thrown across the room. But through the chaos, something else emerged. A silhouette, familiar yet alien, stood before Sarah, its shape flickering like a hologram. It was her, or at least someone who looked like her. The woman from the visions, the one with the glowing eyes, the one who had called to her from the stars. The figure raised its hand, and Sarah felt a jolt of energy surge through her chest. The black hole in front of them seemed to pause, its gravitational pull faltering for a moment. And in that moment, Sarah understood. The woman was her. The Starborn legacy lived within her, and the power to control the Nova Star was her birthright. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a bridge between two worlds, one that could shape the future or destroy it. With a final, desperate push, Sarah embraced the power within her. The energy exploded outward, forming a barrier around the Vanguard. The black hole's pull weakened, then vanished entirely. The ship drifted in space, the danger gone. The crew, though shaken, was alive. But Sarah knew the real journey was just beginning. The Vanguard drifted in the emptiness, the void around them both oppressive and strangely serene. The black hole, the Nova Star, had vanished. Its immense gravitational pull, once so threatening, had dissolved in an instant, leaving Sarah and her crew in a silent, unexplained space between worlds. Despite the calm, Sarah knew the storm was far from over. "Commander!" Lieutenant James called from his station, his voice laced with caution. "I've been running scans, but I can't find anything. There are no stars, no celestial bodies. It's as if we're in a completely different dimension." Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she reached for the console. Her mind was still reeling from the surge of power she had unleashed. She had barely understood the force within her, and it had come to life when she had needed it most. But now, in this strange place, her connection to the universe felt more tenuous than ever. "I don't think we're in a different dimension," she said quietly. "I think we've crossed the threshold. The Nova Star wasn't just a place. It was a veil, a barrier between realities. And by crossing it, we've disrupted something." A flash of light exploded before them, and the ship lurched. Sarah gripped the console, steadying herself. The Vanguard wasn't alone anymore. A ripple passed through the stars, and before her very eyes, the fabric of space seemed to tear. It wasn't an explosion. It was more like a tear in the universe itself, a rent in the very fabric of reality. As the hole grew wider, something emerged from it. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as a massive ship emerged from the tear. It was not like the organic, glowing ships they had seen before. This one was sleek, jagged, and angular, its surface etched with unknown symbols that pulsed with an eerie blue light. It was massive, impossibly large, dwarfing even the Vanguard, and it was coming straight for them. "Shields up," Sarah ordered, her voice a sharp command. But as she reached for the controls, the entire ship vibrated violently, and the control systems went dark. A chill ran down her spine. This was no ordinary ship. The ship's emergence from the rift seemed to have disrupted everything around them. The stars flickered out, and the black hole that had once loomed ahead of them now seemed to pull away, replaced by the looming presence of the unknown vessel. "Commander, James began, but he was cut off by a voice, not from the ship's speakers, but from deep within Sarah's mind. "Sarah Dawson, Starborn, you come further than any before you, but your journey has only begun." The voice was cold, commanding, and alien. It wasn't the being that had spoken to her before, the one that had revealed her legacy. This voice was different, darker. "We are the overseers of the threshold. You have crossed into our domain. And now, you must face the consequences." "Consequences," Sarah whispered, her heart racing. The power within her stirred again, responding to the alien voice, but this time it was chaotic, wild and untamed, as if it were being pulled in different directions. "Commander, what's happening?" Lieutenant James asked, his voice shaking. But Sarah couldn't answer. The voice was growing louder in her mind, drowning out everything else. The Overseers. She had heard of them. Ancient, powerful beings that controlled the boundaries between universes. And now, they were speaking directly to her. "You are the key to a great upheaval, Sarah Dawson. The path you walk will shatter worlds and remake them. Your destiny is no longer just your own. The fate of countless civilizations now lies in your hands." Sarah felt a surge of fear. How could she carry such a weight? She was just one person, just a commander of a small crew, and yet the universe had chosen her for something far beyond anything she could understand. Before she could process the enormity of the voice's words, the massive ship loomed closer, its dark hull blotting out the stars. It was almost upon them. A beam of light shot out from it, striking the Vanguard's hull, but it didn't feel like an attack. The energy felt familiar. It wasn't a weapon. It was something else entirely. The beam engulfed the Vanguard, and for a moment, everything went still. The lights flickered out, and Sarah felt herself being pulled toward the ship as if the fabric of reality itself was bending around her. She could feel the power of the overseers at work, pulling her into their domain. Suddenly, the ship's sensors came back online. The display flashed with data, coordinates, readings, and symbols that made no sense. But one thing stood out. A single phrase appeared on the screen, glowing with an unearthly light. The shattered veil has opened. Your choice is now. And then, Sarah understood. The universe was not simply waiting for her to fulfill a destiny. It was testing her. The shattered veil was a boundary between all realities. And by crossing it, Sarah had set in motion a chain of events that could either save or destroy everything. The overseers had been waiting for her, watching. Now, it was up to Sarah to decide whether she would rise to the challenge or fall under the weight of the universe's expectations. The Vanguard was caught in the grip of the overseers' power. The massive alien ship surrounded them, its dark silhouette blotting out the stars. The strange beam that had enveloped them was still pulsing, and Sarah could feel its energy vibrating through her entire body. It wasn't just an attack. It was something deeper, something that was altering the very core of her being. Her hands gripped the console, but the ship's controls felt foreign. Her crew was silent, staring at the screens, unsure of what was happening. The overseer's presence had flooded her mind once again, their voice reverberating through her thoughts. You are the chosen one, Sarah Dawson. The shattered veil has opened, and you must choose. The fate of all that exists rests in your hands. Will you embrace your true power, or will you allow it to consume you? Sarah closed her eyes, her heart racing. The power within her was unlike anything she had ever imagined. It surged through her veins, a torrent of energy that threatened to tear her apart. She could feel the potential of the stars themselves, creation, destruction, everything in between. She was more than human now. She was something greater. But with that power came a terrible burden. The voice of the overseers wasn't comforting anymore. It wasn't guiding her. It was pushing her toward a decision she wasn't sure she was ready to make. Could she control this power? Could she be the force that rebuilt the universe? Or would she be its undoing? You have crossed the threshold, Sarah. There is no going back. The universe is waiting for its new ruler. You must decide, become the guardian of the stars, or let the void consume all, the overseers warned. The image of the nova star, the black hole, the rift in space, flashed in Sarah's mind. The stars had been swallowed. Worlds had been lost. She had already disrupted the delicate balance of reality by crossing into this unknown space. But could she fix it? The crew was waiting for her. James, Lieutenant Amara, and the others, each of them had placed their trust in her. But what was she supposed to do? How could she make a decision so far beyond human comprehension? Then she remembered something. The woman in her visions, the one with the glowing eyes, had once said, "The stars are not your enemies. They're your allies, your guide." Sarah had been afraid of the power inside her, afraid of the destiny that came with it. But the power wasn't just hers. It was the universe's. She was merely the vessel, the one chosen to carry it forward. She wasn't alone. The stars, the galaxies, the very universe, it all had a rhythm, a purpose. And Sarah realized that her role wasn't to control the power, but to release it, to let the universe guide itself toward its own evolution. The overseers had shown her the weight of her potential, but now she understood that it wasn't a burden. It was a gift. Taking a deep breath, Sarah closed her eyes and let go. She let the power within her flow outward, not as a weapon, but as a catalyst. A burst of energy filled the ship, enveloping everything in brilliant light. The universe itself seemed to respond, a pulse of life that rippled to the fabric of space. The black hole that had once threatened to consume them dissolved into a swirl of light. The rift in the fabric of reality began to close, and the stars reappeared bright and undisturbed. The Vanguard was no longer caught in the void. They were free. And Sarah? She felt at peace for the first time in weeks. The overseer's presence faded from her mind. They had given her the choice, but in the end, it was her decision that shaped the universe. She had chosen to release the power, to allow the stars to find their own balance, rather than impose her will on them. "You have chosen wisely, Sarah Dawson." The overseer's voice echoed one final time, not as a command, but as a quiet acknowledgement. The path of the starborn has ended, and a new era begins. The stars are free, and so are you. The Vanguard systems came back online, and the ship hummed with life once again. The crew looked at Sarah, their eyes filled with awe and disbelief. They had witnessed something unimaginable. A choice had been made, and it had saved them all. Sarah turned to her crew, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've done it. We've made it through. Now we take the path home." She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a commander. She was a part of the universe itself, a starborn not by fate, but by choice. The stars were hers to guide, and together with her crew, she would shape a new future, one where the universe could evolve in its own time, free from the burden of domination. The Vanguard set its course for home, leaving the shattered veil behind. Sarah looked out at the stars, the universe stretching before her. The path was uncertain, but it was hers to walk. And for the first time in her life, Sarah Dawson felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be.